Do you believe through the work that you've done that you've saved lives?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think every professional throughout the world will say that. And in court, she won. And the judge awarded her £3,500 compensation.
Wow.
And she hobbled out of court saying, I wish I'd never had the accident. That's all. But I had a great 5-6 years in TV, film, extra work. Yeah, definitely. I loved it. Met some really nice people and some shocker of actors. You think, oh, I can't believe he's like that. But
who was you can't believe was like that?
Oh, I'm not sure I can name names, really.
Of course you can name names. On this episode of The Engaging Marketeer, I'm speaking with Shabbir Halai, who is a health and safety expert based in Croydon in the UK. Shabir goes around businesses like mine, like yours, and like construction sites and various companies around the UK, showing them what they need to do to keep their employees safe, to keep their workers safe, to keep their customers safe, and to keep everybody generally from having nasty accidents. But above all, he also helps people stay out of prison, stay out of fines, and stay out of the target of the health and safety executive. But don't worry, this isn't going to be a dull podcast about health and safety. Shabir is an extremely interesting and engaging person, and he has also got some stories to share about accidents on the Harry Potter film set and meeting Barbara Windsor on the set of EastEnders. Oh, get out of my pub! Let's have a word with Shabir. I was reading a little bit about your history and the stuff that you've done before your health and safety journey. And one of the obvious things that caught my eye was the fact that you have been an extra in several films and TV shows, including Harry Potter. How did you get into that, and what was it like doing that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's really weird, actually. I supplied a lot of stuff to a client. He moved and went into a modelling agency, and then I got a phone call from Marky saying, oh, Shabir, we need you for an upcoming thing. I've got a job. They want an Asian-looking man, but with a British voice. I'm like, okay, what does it mean? And it was like an extra work. And I'm like, Mark, I'm not an extra. So no, thank you. And he phoned the week after. Is the client still looking? No. Phoned again. Then he said, phone the third time. He said, look, the client really wants to see you. They want to interview in Switzerland. Would you just go and talk to them? I'm like, what, Switzerland? So he said, yeah, we'll send you to Switzerland. They talk to you, and that's it. Sign me up. So I went over to Switzerland, saw Credit Suisse, did an interview, came back, and they liked me. So I did a film for them, a little film. And I said to Mark, that was great, but I hated learning all these lines. Is there anything else that's easier? He said, oh, extra work, Shabir. You just have to pop onto a set, smile, pretend to talk to someone, and you get paid at the end of the day. That's me. I said, let me do that. And I just did lots of extra work, and it's so easy. I love it. Yeah.
So you originally wanted to be an actor, or you wanted to be in film?
Absolutely not. I think people think I want to be an actor because I love presenting. I love health and safety training. I'm out there, quite vocal. But no, actually being an actor, learning lines is the most fearful things to me. Really scary, and that particular job took me 2 weeks to record my lines and listen to every day to memorize it. I've got an awful memory. I did it. I said, Mark, never again. And so he signed me up for what I now know is extra work, and what fun that is, really.
So is it really like what the Ricky Gervais TV show Extras? Is that genuinely what being an extra is like?
I recognise so many aspects in that. That was brilliant. I now know that a lot of extras like to nudge forward to get closer to the director, get closer to the actor or the actress. You know, they all want to be, a lot of extras want to be actors. I do admit that. But because I didn't want to learn in lines, it was quite horrifying sometimes when you're as an extra, you're on set and the director comes up to you, can you just say this line and action? I'm like, oh no, I said, I don't want to do it. And I remember the first time that happened, the director said, you need to say this line. We're in a hospital scene, surgery. We need to get the baby out now. I told you're meant to tell the assistant. And he said, well, if the director said it. Action, we need to get the baby out now. Like, cut. Can you say it with more verve, but not as slow? I'm like, I don't know what that means. We need to get the baby out now. Cut. Say it quicker, but with more passion. We need to get the baby out now. luckily, the third time, that was it. And I said to Mark, no more. I don't want to say anything. It's somebody an extra. And that was fine.
Did you get paid extra for saying lines, or was that just
Yes, you do, actually. That's why a lot of extras want to hold a prop. You know, a sword gets you more money, or saying a line gets you more money. Oh, yes, yes. So, but I'm like, no, just leave me alone. Let me just be on, in the background, smile, pretend to talk to someone. That'll do me.
So does that mean quite a few times then you've been sat at home or sat in the cinema watching something and you've been able to point yourself out?
Oh, yeah. It's quite funny. I was watching, is it The Jury, I think it was. And that was quite an easy one because you're just sitting up in the jury. You just got to look pensive. You're looking down, looking pensive. So you've got this pensive looking people looking down all day long. Yeah. And some interesting ones. You got to meet some really nice actors, some not quite as nice as you would hope. Obviously, you're not genuinely allowed to talk to them. I think one of the funniest ones, or one of the nicest ones for me, was on EastEnders, on the phone chatting away at lunchtime, and Barbara Windsor come up to me. She said, "Oh, hello, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine, thank you." "Lovely, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. All you extras do a great work. You're marvellous," she said. "You're marvellous. Thank you very much." And she toddled off. I'm like, oh, God, I've just spoken to Barbara Windsor.
Wow. So she's was a genuinely nice lady then?
Absolutely, definitely, yeah.
One of the things you've also put down on your BNI profile, I believe it is that you wanted to get into health and safety after seeing some of the things that went on film sets.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked that sort of the range of accidents and dangerous places I saw. I thought, okay, this is a great sort of industry to get involved in. But on a Harry Potter set, I won't say which particular film, this massive chandelier just came and fell down. It wasn't part of the film at all, and it just missed. No, it wasn't part of the film at all. It just missed one of the little people by literally a few inches. Everyone was all in shock. I was probably about 10 or 15 foot away. We were all in shock. I heard the director saying, swearing, "F's sake, get rid of that mess. Come on, we need to carry on filming." And they're like, everyone's rushing around to get the chandelier, broken pieces away. And there's action. I'm like, okay, what about that poor person who's nearly decimated? And I thought,
wow.
Okay. On another set, there was a sort of fire occurred. I could see this sort of fire on this fake wall. It looked like a marble wall, but it was wood. Caught fire. And I said to one of the assistant directors, "Oh, that's quite dangerous. It's going to catch fire. It's on wood." "Yeah, don't worry." And sure enough, about half an hour later, it did. Another different director, cut, what's going on? Get rid of that, come on. And it was like, yeah, it was interesting then the range of accents I saw on site. But unfortunately, the pressure was on for filming. I was on a Poirot film, which I loved. I mean, Murder on the Orient Express. I love Poirot films. I was so chuffed to be on that. But it was a night shoot. And to me, it seemed obvious, this platform with all the cameras and the cables everywhere, it seemed obvious that someone could fall over the edge of the platform. It was so dark. And sure enough, someone did. And she broke her leg. There wasn't much sympathy. It was like, get her off to hospital. Come on, let's get her. So after a little, I decided with the hours you need to do, and I found out from some of the safety people how much they get paid, it's not really, I don't want to go on the film set at 5 o'clock in the morning and be there until 7 p.m. in the evening, really, much as I love health and safety. But I had a great 5-6 years in TV, film, extra work. Yeah, definitely. I loved it. Met some really nice people and some shocker of actors. You think, oh, I can't believe he's like that. But
who was you can't believe was like that?
Oh, I'm not sure I can name names, really.
Of course you can name names.
I shan't, actually, but let's see if I might loosen my tongue a bit later on.
It was Alan Rickman, wasn't it? It was Alan Rickman. No.
But Ricky Gervais, actually, I was in a couple of his ones. Is it Little People? Yeah, he was really good, actually.
Life's Too Short.
Life's Too Short, yeah.
Life's
really,
Too Short.
really fun. Yeah, that was so funny. Offset as well. You realise how funny they really are, these people, actually. Yeah.
Warwick Davis is hilarious, isn't he?
Oh, my God, yeah. Yeah.
So you thought, right, you don't want to do health and safety for film and television because, quite frankly, it's an absolute bloody nightmare. I presume as well, if you're doing health and safety for, say, a construction site, they are motivated to get it right. They want to get it right because the consequences are huge. Whereas, from what you've said on film and TV, they're not that bothered about getting it right. They just want to scrape somebody out the way and carry on regardless. To name a carry-on movie.
Yeah, I think maybe on film and TV, there's so much going on. Maybe there's sort of a pressure to film and costs. So I'm not saying they completely ignored health and safety, but they certainly didn't do as much as I would have done or could have done. Construction, it's interesting what you said, Darren, that they're more motivated. Sadly, most of the workplace fatalities happen in construction industry, work from height, falls, etc. So I don't know if they're more motivated. Certainly the inspectors inspect construction sites more than most other types of premises, the other fixed premises you can think of, factories, workshops, warehouses, care homes, etc. Construction is a big focus because that's where most of the risks lay. Actually, has this changed daily, of course.
Well, the consequences of breaking the rules on construction, there's prison sentences, isn't there, if it goes wrong?
Absolutely. And there aren't that many prosecutions, if I'm honest, something like 200 odd, the last statistics I've seen, but they're criminal prosecutions. And what a lot of people don't realise is that if the inspector decides to take your business to court, or the director, it's a criminal prosecution. So all those people that are found guilty in the courts, and quite honestly, the inspector wins on 94% of the cases. They're not going to prosecute until they win, unless they're going to win, sorry. That person, the supervisor, the director, it's a criminal liability. So those that are found guilty, some are punished with huge fines, some are punished with jail sentences. Typically, although the maximum in law is 18 years, it's unusual, as you can imagine. So typically 6, 9, 12 months. But of course, it was only last week that the director got jailed for 10 and a half years because 4 people died during that particular incident. So there is the ability to be sent to jail for a long period. Once you're found guilty, criminal record, you'll find it hard to get a mortgage or a loan. You're often struck off as a director for 5 years. So lots of consequences beyond the actual court fine, really. And our job in health and safety, all the health and safety professionals, our job is to try and prevent that accident or incident from happening so the director can't be prosecuted. The company can't go to the courts.
Well, what possessed you wanting to do that in the first place? Because I've got a mate who works in health and safety. I'll name it. He works for JD Sport, and he reviews all of the stores before they open, and then does like spot inspections of them as well to make sure that when the health and safety inspector turns up, that they're doing everything they should do. So it's better he finds problems than they find problems. But he refers to himself as the fun sponge.
Yeah, I like that.
You get that? Oh no, it's the health and safety people have turned up. They've ruined all the fun out of it. We've got to put all this clothing on. We've got to put these hats on. Ridiculous. What makes you want to be a fun sponge?
That's interesting because I'll be very honest here. Hands up that when I left school all those years ago, I don't know if it's the same now, but in those days you were sent to the careers lady. So I went to her and said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I love technical drawing. I'm always drawing cars. I'm always drawing car dashboards. I love drawing. I like technical drawing. I'm really good at metalwork and woodwork." Oh, I said, "Well, come back next week." So I went back next week. She said, "Shabir, you're starting next week as an engineer in the chemical factory. You'll be an engineer and there's a 5-year apprenticeship." I said, "Oh, thank you." And I said, "Is there a technical drawing department there?" She said, "I don't know, but when you get there, ask them." And sure enough, they didn't have a technical drawing department. So I became an engineer. It was okay.
That's how it was that simple. Your careers advisor got you the job.
Yes, yeah. In those days, they got you a job. It was a 4-year apprenticeship, and I did love it because you were making things, or fabricating things, welding, cutting, and I didn't know it then. I really had no clue. But the engineers that taught me actually worked really, really safely. I had no concept of safety. I don't remember safety, but they taught us in a safe way, and we just learned our profession. And it was only later on I realized how good these guys were. because the factory was bought up by Unilever and immediately closed down. Of course, we were all made redundant, and I got a job in a sausage factory in Peckham. As you do, fixing the sausage machines, which
This is becoming only fools and horses. But go on.
but sausage machines break down a lot. Trust me, and slicing machines. Yeah.
Oh, you hear about it all the time. Oh no, not another problem with the sausage machine.
But again, I love fixing things. So you had to do a 3-shift rota. Loved fixing it about 4 or 5, probably 6 years. And at some point, I mean, unfortunately, every year, an engineer would cut a finger off, or slice a finger off, or squeeze a finger off, depending what machine it was on. And I remember at some point the chief engineer, Mike Newman, came up to me. He said, "Shabir, you're just about the only engineer left with 10 fingers. Would you do our health and safety?" And I thought about it. I said, "Well, if you send me on a proper course, yeah, I would." So he said, "Oh, we'll find a course and let me know." So I didn't Google it then, because there was no such thing as Google, but researched it. And ROSPA did a 2-week safety officer course. Got on it, got my first certificate, and that was literally, that first certificate was 1989. I got my health and safety certificate that long ago. But I loved it. It was just so easy. I thought, I came back from the course and I thought, gosh, health and safety is so easy. And I made so many small changes down in this sausage factory. You wouldn't believe it. Small changes, but no one else cut their finger off after that. And the average, I think there were about 42 accidents per month on average, went down to 2, just with some minor changes that you wouldn't believe now if I told you what they were. So simple. And the cost was almost insignificant. And I thought, this is easy. And stay there for a few more years doing health and safety. And I think in the end, they probably didn't want to go as far as I would like them to go on. So I was poached by Hammersmith and Fulham Council and became a safety officer there with lots of other people. And that was a great experience as well.
I love that qualification. Oh, we need someone to do health and safety in here. Shabir, you've got all your fingers.
And I still have, by the way, just to let you know.
Clearly the man for the job. I love that.
Yeah.
So the qualification you did was, I mean, we're going back a bit now, aren't we? But there's different types of health and safety qualifications. So there's one specifically to do with food. Was yours a food health and safety qualification, or was it a different one because you weren't physically doing the food?
Yeah, so it wasn't food safety. It was a health and safety qualification. The main ones now are NEBOSH General Certificate. It's still a 2-week course. You can then move on to a NEBOSH diploma, as I did. IOSH, I'm a member of IOSH. IOSH was the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, the largest organisation that covers health and safety in the world. So I'm a chartered member of IOSH, and they've got their own sort of 2-3 week courses. So a range of courses. Qualifications I now know are one thing. The certificate is important, I believe. But the actual practical health and safety is as important as well. So getting a certificate is one thing. And what I noticed in COVID, a lot of people went online. A lot of people got health and safety qualifications. The certificate you can get with, good learning. But of course, the practical implementation, that's where you need to shadow someone really on health and safety, I believe, to sort of learn the trade properly, as in any industry.
Yeah, there's a lot of retraining going on during COVID, wasn't there? And obviously health and safety being a big thing, because people needed to make sure that when everybody went back to work, that procedures were going to be followed to make sure COVID wasn't fully further spread or it can come back.
Yeah.
So I presume it was a boom time for you, I'd have thought.
Well, it was a bit of a difficult period in the sense that all around me, business colleagues were quiet or stopping work, losing money, laying off people, furloughing people. And I was getting busier and busier. We had to write a lot of COVID risk assessments, do training. So I did actually ask a mentor of mine, I'm finding it difficult that we're making more money whilst all around us are making less money. And it was an interesting chat. He said, Shabir, look, you're helping these people out. If you don't write these assessments, that construction company is not allowed on site to do the work. And yet you've written the assessment, you've trained them, they're carrying on doing the work. So you've allowed other companies to carry on working. In times of hardship, those people will help you out. There may be a case where health and safety people. So I thought that helped me a lot. But yeah, we did a lot of COVID risk assessments and helped a lot of people out. And I'm pleased we did, actually.
And what is it about it that you actually enjoy? What gets you out of bed in the morning to do it?
Gosh, you know how directors seem to hate health and safety. Whether they don't understand it, they think it's complicated, they think it's expensive. And it's quite fascinating how many people just hate it. How many directors have said to my face, "Oh, I hate health and safety." They haven't got time. But I say to them, "You're an expert in your business. I can't do what you're doing. You've got the range of people doing this work. I can't do it." We love health and safety, my team and I, because we simplify it. That's the one thing. Slogan there is simple, sensible safety. And what that really means is if we keep safety really simple, then people will do it and they'll do it more often. And that's a big win for us. If we keep it sensible, which means appropriate to you and your business, that means it's appropriate. And safety really is the absence of danger and hazards. And who wouldn't want the absence of danger and hazards? So what gets me out of bed for health and safety? I love the simplicity of what we do. Minor changes, small bits of training. It's always little and often with health and safety. People sometimes we take on a new customer and they want all this thing done, next week. I said, no. Let's do over a program, little and often. You're busy doing your work. We'll make some small changes. And there are some simple things that can give directors a big tick straight away. Because I know, and my team know, that after an accident or an incident and the inspector comes on board, they come along, they're going to want to see your health and safety policy. It doesn't matter what you think. If you've got more than 5 employees, you have to have a written health and safety policy by law. That's it. So have a policy, but make sure you sign it, because if the director doesn't sign it, it's invalid. Make sure the date on it isn't that old. If you don't review it every year, it can be out of date. So have a health and safety policy and procedures that are not too old, but signed. The other thing I want to see is your risk assessments, because the law is very clear. You're doing some work in your business, you're a car garage, you're a care home, you're a hotel, you're doing your sort of work. You must have risks in those, and all you've got to do is assess them. And most people have risks, and then they put in controls to prevent dangers. Well, write those down, and then just check the controls are enough for your business. So you have to have written risk assessments. But again, if they're not signed, they're not really worth much. If they're more than a year old, the inspector could think, well, hang on, you haven't taken into account the new legislation that came in last year. So annual reviews is really important. You've got policies, a big tick for a director. Risk assessments, a big tick. And the third one really is the simple one, I think, is training. You have to have training in your industry. You've got to train your workers in whatever you do. It's sometimes very easy. I listened to one of your podcasts, and the lady talked about musculoskeletal. As if you remember,
Yes.
if you use a computer, it can lead to musculoskeletal disorders, MSDs. Well, the computer regulations are very simple and give you a guidance sheet on how to avoid those, how to use the computer safely, so you don't get MSDs, you don't get neck ache, backache, pain, visual problems. And that's a simple assessment, it's self-assessment, 20 minutes. There are other training you can do for people that will help them just be aware of the dangers of all around them. What you can't do is assume that worker knows the dangers, even though they've been in the industry for 15 years, 12 years, 20 years. You can't assume that. That's one thing. And I think you can probably agree that if you do some training up to someone on marketing, does it last forever? You've got to refresh it at some point, haven't you? Because people forget things and things change. One of the big ones, I suppose, for construction companies that's written in the law is that they must have asbestos awareness training every single year.
Really? Every year?
Yeah, every year. That's the only regulation I can think of that says you must do something every year. And directors say, well, why the hell? It's really inconvenient. It's costly. Why does it every year? Well, go back to the regulations. We finally banned asbestos here in 1999. Why? Because it was killing so many workers every year. It still kills 5,000 people a year in the UK, asbestos, from past asbestos exposure. So the annual refresher just makes sure that new people coming in the industry, we remind them, asbestos is dangerous. It's not dangerous if it's not damaged and you don't disturb it. But if you damage and disturb it, it's dangerous. So annual refresher training on that. Other things maybe every 3 years. Manual handling, every 3 years. Work height, every 3 years. Legionella, every 2 years. There's a range of things, what's suitable. But I love the simple things. If you can just simplify it and have a program in place, little and often, you'd be amazed what can happen between now and 6 months' time, the difference in your company and the outlook if you get on board.
Speaking then about the asbestos stuff, I mean, I had asbestos in a house I bought recently and had to have it redeveloped, and some of it was channeled out and disposed of, and much of it was left as is, because there was some under the floor, some was just tiled on top of it, and there's no point to move it. I remember speaking to my mate, I just told you about John, who does the health and safety for JD, and he was talking to me at great length about asbestos and the different types of asbestos and how it's actually marvellous stuff, wonderful stuff, an incredible invention. It's just got this one minor flaw. Which is a bit of a problem, which is a real shame, because we never knew, did we, when we started using it? We never knew.
Well, I'm going to maybe differ on that one. The first report came out in 1904 from a doctor who was very clear. He was very clear. He worked around the corner from an asbestos factory, and he's like, hang on, why are so many people getting this disease and dying?
Wow.
And he found some form of link. It didn't really go very far. Then World War I meant that we had to put lots of asbestos in ships and tanks. You know, we didn't have to, but they decided to. And therefore it was used a lot. World War II used a lot. And then, of course, the boom in construction, and it was actually known as the miracle material, because although some people had found out about it, some of the scientific evidence paid for by the asbestos industry maybe didn't do it justice. Rather similar to the smoking industry, some of the smoking scientific evidence wasn't maybe as thorough as it could have been.
Completely impartial, I'm sure.
But the unions bashed away in the 70s and 80s. There was a voluntary ban, and they bashed away. And finally, in 1999, the UK decided to ban all the use and importation of chrysotile, chrysidolite, amosite, the blue, brown, and white asbestos. But because of the latency period, now we're talking 1999 is 26 years ago, asbestos can take 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years to rear its head. And that's why the sort of deaths carried on going. There are about 5,000. We expect them to sort of level off. But health and safety is about preventing accidents and incidents. And on asbestos training once a year, surveys, every premise that was built before 1999 should have a survey. You know, it's £400, £500, £600. It's a one-off thing that tells you where the asbestos is. So there are simple ways in all aspects of health and safety to prevent accidents, incidents, and occupational ill health.
Yeah, I had to have that. I had an asbestos survey on the house.
Yeah,
finding all the areas where it was. Very
just
frustrating.
gives you the knowledge, the information, the tools to do something. If you don't have that, then you don't have the tools to do the correct thing. So health and safety training is just a bit of information. Some of our courses online are 25 minutes, some an hour, some 2 hours. You can do a toolbox talk on a construction site in 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but you remind things. If you do little and often, that's where safety improves, I think, over a period of time.
So is that sufficient then for construction companies? If they have somebody do an online course, say with yourself or with somebody else, that can take half an hour or an hour once a year, that's okay?
It's all risk assessment based. What are you doing? So construction industry is vast. I know people in construction that just lay carpets. The law says that is construction work. So they've got to have asbestos awareness training. I know people who build buildings, 6 stories, 25 stories. That's a different set. So your risks on your construction project have to be managed, and you do the induction that suits that particular site. And then your induction might say, okay, on this site, we need to do a toolbox talk every week. On this site, we've got to do it every day before you start work. On this site, we do it once a month. So it's all risk-based. Everything is risk-based. But what the inspector, I found from all the problems we get told of, we had about 6 new clients last year from construction where the inspectors come along and issued a prohibition notice and stopped work completely. And you can appreciate that's quite expensive.
Quite expensive, yeah.
But we found that all the inspector wanted was good management of the site. And if the management had some inkling of health and safety, then they would have known that risk assessment, method statement, policy, and training. And that's the normal common things. If you did those things, you would have solved all these issues and not had the improvement notice or the prohibition notice. And welfare is another one that tends to be issued a notice on as well. And in construction, you know, the clients, we've got 2 sets of clients. Half of them are construction based, half are not. But the construction ones get a template on how to run a site safely. It's really super easy. I'm happy to send you that template. You've just got to tick off some things to make sure you've covered things. It's basic. You've got to have welfare. If you don't have toilets, facilities and welfare facilities, the inspector, if they come by, will close you down. It's as simple as that. If you don't have a first aid kit, you should have. If you don't have fire extinguishers, you should have. If you don't have sort of emergency plan, what you do if there's a fire, well, we go there to that. No, don't go there. This is safer. We go there. It's quite simple and basic health and safety, I think, in most. And it just repeats. You're doing the same thing. So we've got car garages with all the same risks in all our car garages we look after. We do sort of a training course, a template course that suits them. Care homes slightly different. We've sort of changed the risk assessment for care homes, obviously. The hotels we look after, very different now because of the changes in fire regulations. A couple of years ago, the fire regulations changed quite dramatically, due in part to Grenfell. And now we've got the Building Safety Act making small changes. But going back to health and safety, what is the point of health and safety? It's actually to prevent people losing their lives, and it's actually to prevent accidents, hurting and harming workers. But that's it. That's the point of health and safety, not necessarily anything else. And if you can implement some sort of simple process that suits your business, you won't add to the death toll. I think 138 people died at work last year in the UK. When I started in health and safety all those years ago, 35 years ago, it was about 700 people died every year in the UK. And that's gone down year after year after year. Why? A few more regulations, but also all those regulations now say train people, remind them, train them, give them information, which is not a bad thing to do in my view, but some directors think it's complicated, awkward, difficult, expensive. What's expensive is having the accident.
Yeah.
And I think what I found, it's a bit bizarre really, but what I found directors have told me after an incident, it's not necessarily the money it's cost them. You know, you've got to pay the HSE, I think it's £172 an hour for their fee for intervention. That's only £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 eventually. It's the time. The time they've got to be taken away from their business and deal with the inspector, the questions, they want this, they want this, they want this. So I often probably exaggerate that aspect for directors, that really you're going to save a lot of time if you don't have accidents and incidents. By putting in this very simple health and safety procedure, you're going to save yourself a lot of time.
Do you believe through the work that you've done that you've saved lives?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think every professional throughout the world will say that. It's quite hard to prove it. You know, that's one of the things about health and safety. You can spend some money on health and safety, nothing happens. We can't prove that had they had an accident, you would have saved this amount of money. I can only go back to where we get called in after the accident, and then people tell us how much it costs. We had a food warehouse in Brick Lane a few years ago. The inspector came by, shut it down, and the director told me it cost him £42,000 to close that place for 4 days.
Wow.
I charged him £1,500 to solve all the health and safety issues. It was literally policies, procedures, risk assessment, training, done in 2 days. But how do you tell someone that if you'd spent this 1,500, you could have prevented being closed for 4 days? I still don't know how to sort of get that across. I could say, and I don't say it's the law. It doesn't really convince directors. I could say you might get fined, tens of thousands of pounds. It doesn't really work. I could say you might go to jail. Directors don't believe it. I just know, most professionals know that if we can just implement a little bit of health and safety, you're not going to have that significant accident or incident. That's all.
Well, you do have to obviously convey that message yourself in B&I meetings. You have to get other people to understand that, to refer you. So what is it you do to get that to work for you?
So I often mention different things. Sometimes an accident, like today's one, a few days ago, where that poor the lady's been jailed for 10.5 years. That's unusual. We sometimes mention the fines. We took on a hotel a few years ago where the most random of accidents happened, where a hotel guest opened the window, and the window wasn't secured. You're meant to have a window that's open 4 inches only on hotels, but so you opened the window, and again the plant pot out there wasn't secure. She nudged it off the edge, fell on someone's head. They sued. It cost this company £100,000 fine. So I mentioned simple things like window restrictors. I took in a window restrictor recently and said, look, if you've got windows on the first floor or above and people could fall out, consider this window restrictor. It was £2.45 it cost me. Consider those. And people were like, what, is that all? Yeah. And I mentioned that because the judge in court said, this is £2.45. Why didn't you put one of those on? So in B&I, I do short, as you probably know, they're short presentations. I sometimes mention problems in court. I did a presentation recently where I took a brick in, and I said to the people in the room, there were 60 businesses, right, I'm going to show you how to swallow this brick. And I got it ready. It was a proper house brick. Got it ready. But I couldn't swallow it. But 3 days earlier in the paper, there was a story about a guy who'd swallowed a full brick's worth of dust in 10 years of his working life because he didn't wear a dust mask. And that's how you swallow a brick, not wearing a dust mask over a period of 10 years. Do you really want that inside you? Or would you wear a £1.25 dust mask? So the ways of conveying health and safety, I probably do it in a bit of a quirky way because I like to get people's attention, because people aren't interested in the fine or the jail sentence. I find simple ways to engage people, enlighten them, and I love it. My team love health and safety. I can't say we make it fun, but I want to be slightly different. I want people just to engage. Unfortunately, most health and safety people I meet are quite boring. They're quite droll. They'll quote you regulation and subsection. I'm not interested in that. I want to know the outcome for you. If I go to you and you're a restaurant, I'm going to give you the fire risk assessment you need, the food safety audit you need, a simple risk assessment you need, and do some training for your workers, and then give you some toolbox talks you can do yourself once a month, some internal training, and we refresh that every year so it's in date. And most of the clients are happy with that. They do call in and email with problems. We love dealing with those. I think that's how we try and make safety a bit more engaging with my networking group. Just sort of, I've got my glass, my mystic ball I take in sometimes, this amazing mystic ball, I look into it, and it's rather like this is the equivalent of our health and safety audits, I say, because you've got this ball, and if I go on site with a health and safety audit, I can predict the accident potential for that site. It's so easy. A health and safety audit will look at a range of things, 82 different things, and that's a prediction of this site. It's like Mystic Meg and her ball. It really is easy.
So this is what can go wrong with your site
Yeah.
if you don't do this.
Yeah. If I go to a site, I went to a site recently and it's a car garage. I had some steps up to the rear fire exit, but the fire exit was chained. And all the steps were full of chemicals. It doesn't take an expert to tell you that if there was a fire, how are you going to get out of that door? A, it's full of flammable chemicals. B, it's chained. So we sort of spot those. A health and safety audit is probably I love those because it sort of spots the potential. And if an inspector had got there before me, the fire inspector probably would have served a closure notice. They often do when fire exits are chained. Or if they were lenient, they would just said, look, unchain it now, and then give them a stern letter. But, so if we can get there before the inspector, we're going to save you lots of money, lots of time. But my good takeaway is that education, that little bit of education for the director and the company. I love doing that. I love it. I'll tell you one quick story, which I really enjoyed, because I come from engineering, as you know. I make things. I love workshops. We've got workshops, factories, warehouses, car garages. I like those sort of businesses. And went to this workshop, woodworking shop. The director signed up, wasn't totally convinced, I don't think, but had an accent, signed up. And he said, well, would you come in once a month and do a training with all the guys out there in the workshop? I said, yeah, of course I would. I'd love doing that. So I went in the first month in the workshop. I had all the tools, and there were 7 guys like that. One got a cigarette out, started sparking it up. I'm like, okay, well, it's illegal to smoke inside the workshop. I could tell from their glazed over eyes they weren't really engaging, but I went through my spiel. I did some questions and answers. I forced them to talk to me with simple answers. Not much engagement, it's okay. Next month, bit better, but they didn't smoke inside this time around. Third month I got there, one of the guys had chopped the tip of his finger off.
Ouch.
And he says, Shabir, you know what, it's completely my fault. I can't believe it. I heard you saying about gloves and I knew I should have used the push stick it was the final cut. All the things you hear about the accident, it's just the final thing you're going to do. But the others were more engaged. By month 5, the director emailed me and said, Shabir, I don't know what you've done to my workers. They're coming to me asking for PPE. They've asked for safety signs to go up. They're now doing this. They're putting the guards up. They've repaired the guards. It's just little and often. And if you can engage with them, it took a little while for me to get engaged with them. It works. And the director now loves walking around and doing a health safety inspection. He also makes his other supervisors walk around. It can't just be one person checking things. And that went from there. That incremental safety just went up nice and slow. By month 9, it was just amazing. I loved it. I was just pleased. And the one incident they had, he admitted it was completely his fault. He didn't put a claim in or anything. But yeah, I love it.
That's interesting, the approach that you've got there, because I think it will make a difference, won't it? If you've got a health and safety person that is extremely dull, very confrontational, this is the rule, this is the way you should be doing it, do it this way, or I'm going to cite you. People are just going to kick back against it. They're going to say, why do I need to do it like that? But if you do what you did, you get them engaged, you get them on board, you get them to believe it's for them, not for you, not for rules and regulations, not for the government, not for the health and safety executive. It's for them.
Absolutely.
They'll buy into it. There'll be fewer accidents, and you're going to save more lives. Yeah.
Well, for us, our team, during training, we often say, well, what is health and safety to you? What does it mean? We get a range of answers, but health and safety is us. It's workers going to work, doing their work, and going home in the same condition as they arrived in work. No aches and pains, no broken bones, no cut fingers. Health and safety is just being as simple as that. The spin-off of that is that the company can't get prosecuted and the director can't go to jail or be fined. That's a spin-off of good health and safety. And it means you don't have pain or inconvenience. And, if I think of all the accidents I've been told about in my working life, without doubt, it's not just been an accident, it's been pain for that person. And then it's been huge inconvenience. let's say they've broken a leg, or they can't take the dog for a walk now. When they go for the physio, they've got to take a cab instead of walking, and it's cost them more money. And the inconvenience is quite incredible. It's pain, inconvenience. So that's why I say to employees, you might think you get a massive payout. You don't. I think in the thousands of people I've trained, I've remember probably 3 instances where an employee has got a payout, actual real payout. And one of those, the lady had slipped, broken her leg at work because the floor was very slippery and not cleaned correctly. And she took the company to court. And I think it takes about 2.5 years to get to court normally if you put a claim in. In those 2.5 years, she spent £5,000 on physio and medication. And in court, she won. And the judge awarded her £3,500 compensation. Wow. And she hobbled out of court saying, I wish I'd never had the accident. That's all. And that's what I find with most people. You're not going to get this massive claim generally. And the accident will impact on your life. So, yeah, put the gloves on. Yeah, put the safety glasses on. Yeah, put the ear defenders in. Yeah, there's some water's just spilt there, or some coffee. Clean it up, or if you haven't got time, ask someone else to. That's what I love about health and safety. It is so simple in most cases. It really is.
Which is exactly what it says on your banner.
Yeah.
Simple. Yeah. Shabir, we're out of time. But I love that. I didn't think health and safety would be so interesting. I knew the adverse part of it would be interesting, but I didn't think the health and safety itself would be so interesting. So thank you for that. Thank you for teaching us that, and for being so engaging on the subject as well. I can see why you do quite well within B&I for it. No. And thank you for being on the podcast.
More than welcome. Thank you, Darren.
Cheers.